Hello. I just wanted to talk about some thoughts I just had about marriage. Some thoughts that I've built up over a few years. Just about the concept of marriage and what marriage is socially. And connect that into games design and what I've learned there. Some interesting thoughts. Marriage is not a healthy thing, I don't think, for modern society. It's sort of a gamble. I see it as a gamble on how people think will feel for each other in the future. It's kind of like saying, oh, I believe, I feel so much for you right now that 10 years or 20 years or just forever I'm still going to feel that way, which is understandable when people get into new relationships. Obviously there's a lot of reasons to reinforce the idea that it's going to go really well. People like to feel good. They're not so often interested in actually working out if something is good. It's just like, it feels good and I want to go with it. And people do that with most stuff. They do it with food. I did it with my car. I was just like, it goes forward, it doesn't burst into flames, so it must be a good car. It turns out it was not so great, because I didn't have any understanding of what it entailed, buying and driving a car. I could drive, obviously, wasn't just driving around like ad hoc. But the same thing with marriage is you enter into a contract with someone, gambling on the condition that you will still feel a certain way for them. And a lot of people seem to do it without really understanding feelings or emotions or relationships. They either don't have much experience or they have too much of the wrong kind of experience, and it's sort of a flex tape that they can slap on things. And that's something I think a lot of people recognise is, marriage is not going to fix your problems. Having a kid is definitely not going to fix your problems. But it's just this absurd idea of gambling on how you'll feel for someone in the future. And there's only two ways that can end, really, which is that you were right and you're still together, in which case the marriage never was important. There's no need for that. The gamble if you're actually still together, because that's what matters at the end of the day, not your ability to forecast whether the relationship is a good partnership or not. And the other thing that can happen is you were wrong, and now you've got to go through like a pretty rough time splitting it up, and all the burden of having to separate from someone, which, as far as I can tell, costs a lot of money. But the main problem I see with marriage is, and this is something I've learned through games design, which is what I do, is when you oblige someone to behave a certain way, then they can't take any pride or they can't take any responsibility for behaving that way anymore. For example, if you're at work and you were just about to go and do some extra job, like 2 minutes after your shift, like empty the bin, and then the manager comes down and says, oh, you've got to empty that bin. It changes from being the person who decided to empty the bin, and is therefore clearly a good, a valuable member of the team, to a person who is just obedient. And everyone is obedient when they're forced to be, when it makes like sense in that situation to be obedient. And that's kind of what marriage is. It's taking away the ability to present yourself as someone who chooses to be in a relationship every day. Each person then knows that there's a contract attached to the relationship, and if they choose not to, if they might not love each other, they might not feel the way they predicted they would for each other, they now have a reason to think that person would be misleading towards them because of the costs, the financial costs and the professional costs and the social costs of deserting that relationship, and especially being the one to terminate it. It's very easy to come across as the one who is causing problems if you're the one who says, oh, I want this to end, if there is a marriage, because of all the problems it causes. And without that, people who aren't married, if they're together, then they know like there's no financial obligation to be together. It's just you choose to be together, and they could choose to go somewhere else, and they don't. And I think that's a big part of what makes non-marital relationships so strong. At least in my experience, they seem much stronger. Is is that they can trust that it's like completely down to how the person feels. There's no other influence on it, there's no other factors. And they're also quite isolated as well. They tend to be the relationships that can still function by themselves. There's no obligations to family, and that's another issue I think with marriage, is once it's like you marry into a family and now there are social obligations, people expect you to go to certain events, whereas people who just stay unmarried, it's like, well, you know, this is our relationship, it's not theirs, their family's relationship. You know, I'm still free to do as I want. So there's a lot of implications with marriage, and it all bases around this one sort of instance of just wanting to display that you believe that the relationship is going to go well and last the test of time, and that really doesn't say anything. Saying, I think, it's like, obviously if you're together and close with this person, then obviously you want to assume that it's going to last the test of time and be great forever, because you would just go and find someone else who you did feel that way for. So it's almost just a kind of superficial claim that does impress people. It does, you know, sweep people off their feet, or that, or, you know, make them blush or whatever, makes them feel really special. But at the cost of just holding people's relationships and feelings to a contract. And it's something that I get questioned on a lot. It's like, oh, you don't like marriage because, I don't know, you don't believe in romance, or you're not like socially in tune, or that. But I think that's usually, I think it's natural for people to protect their decisions, because it reflects, you know, if someone points out a bad decision I make, it reflects badly on me, or not badly, it affects how people look at me. And I don't think people would want to get married and then admit, like, oh yeah, this, not all people would want to go, yeah, I was very naive and I completely messed up, that's who I am. So I think a big part of it is also, you know, like relaxing on the pressure of relationships, or weddings especially. All this stuff with spending like £4,000 on a wedding, like, and nearly a year's earnings for some people on lower income. On a wedding, it just adds a lot of pressure. I mean, if weddings were just like a small simple thing, which is what I think weddings should be if they do exist, is just two people saying, you know, let's have a celebration of our relationship. Let's not bind anyone to anything, because we don't need to, because our feelings are genuine. Let's just, you know, have a party, a celebration, an event to celebrate it. There's nothing wrong with that. Some people have a baby and celebrate it. Some people get a new job or a new house and celebrate it. So a new relationship isn't really absurd. We don't need to spend like £4,000 on like a unicorn, or I don't know, some turkeys or something. We're at my sister's wedding, they had turkeys in the background. I don't think they paid for that, but they got the turkeys. The turkeys were included in the price, apparently. They weren't eating the turkeys, they were just making turkey noises in the background. Yeah, that's my thoughts on weddings. I think no one ever really talks about it, but it's just something I wanted to talk about, because, you know, just wondering, is that something else people feel? Am I just like allergic to romance, or, you know, is it a logical viewpoint? I feel like it is. I feel like it's a good justification, a good reason to feel that way. But obviously marriage is a very popular thing, so like people start making money and it's like, well, let's buy a house and get married, which is, you know, there's a lot of things you can do with like a marriage budget. You can buy, like, I don't know, buy a small helicopter. I don't know how smaller £4,000 helicopter would be, but you could buy a large bicycle. No, it wouldn't work.